So, as of the past little while, I've gotten really sucked into Cozy Grove, as 2 to 3 years late as I am to it, and subsequently the world and lore surrounding it. Because for me, it seems like there's basically a fine line where if I get emotionally attached enough to a certain piece of media, I end up spiraling into being far too fixated on and obsessed with it for my own good. Cozy Grove is a cozy indie game by Spryfox that many seem to call a life sim and compare heavily to Animal Crossing, but I personally struggle to do either because of how differently the game does things compared to Animal Crossing and most other typical life sim games. To me, it's far closer to Spiritfarer, another cozy game that just so happened to be what I played through right before Cozy Grove, making for a very interesting but also very smooth transition. I'm definitely still far from being super experienced or well versed in this style of game and cozy games in general though, so if you haven't played and want to form your own thoughts and opinions about it, there are a good number of videos from other cozy gaming creators diving more into how it works and plays. Or if you think it's something you'd be into, considering how relatively affordable it is, maybe give it a try for yourself. Oh, also for those who haven't played through the game though, a warning that from this point on there will be spoilers, as is inherent to an essay about the plot of a fictional story. Throughout the course of the game, you as the protagonist are a spirit scout, sent to the island of Cozy Grove to help the spirits of the dead who still haunt the island, represented as anthropomorphic bears, who, when I look at their upright rectangular shape, I cannot help but be reminded of Bluey. As you help them remember their past and work through their problems, you gradually learn about their stories and grow your bond with them, until they are eventually able to come to terms and rest in peace. Again, a very similar concept for those who have ever played Spiritfarer, just without the spirits having any personal connections to the player prior to their death. One person who we do already know prior to the events of the game though, and by we or us I mean the player, protagonist, is Scoutmaster Blake, who regularly sends us letters from off the island, that for some reason we're able to get and read but can't respond to, and also manage to carry entire household furniture items through a paper envelope? My theory on this, though I could be totally wrong, is that given how there's explicitly nobody traveling to and from the island to physically deliver these letters, and so we receive them through what is a ghost, I'm guessing that Blake is sending these letters through some spiritual and or supernatural means. Like how my parents put fruit on the Buddha cabinet thing and light the incense and it's supposed to send them to my deceased ancestors, I guess? I don't know, man, I'm not religious, that's just what I was told. Anyways, his letters fill us in here and there on why and how we got to be here and what's going on back over in society while we're away. Why I'm here though is because I couldn't help but notice that although there have been people online since the game's launch talking about the stories of individual bears and what they got going on, aside from like 2 Reddit threads, neither of which got much traction, nobody seems to have talked about the lore or backstory behind Cozy Grove itself as a place, or noticed the protagonist's pretty tragic situation. To be honest, from my very initial impressions of the game, I was never able to quite put a finger on why, but it didn't quite click right away as something I'd stick with or actually get really into. However, even at the beginning of the game, it didn't take long before, being the emotional person that I am, the situation was already pulling at my feelings. First our boat washes away and we're stranded, the next day we find out that we got sent to the wrong island, and the very next that the wreckage of our boat washed ashore on the mainland. With this, the camp knows that not only are we on the wrong island, but also stranded here alone. And we get a pretty thinly veiled foreshadowing from Blake of, we'll probably come to get you. Maybe. Oh no. This was already the point where I felt so bad for my character and was like, I can't just leave. The letters from the homeland give us little useful information about Cozy Grove as an island, aside from how there used to be a town here decades ago that apparently died out. We find out a lot more about this place through Charlotte, a ranger, who's the first bear spirit we talk to and at which point isn't super pleased to find out that we're a spirit scout. As her story progresses, we come to find out this was because when she was still alive, she herself was a spirit scout, as well as a resident of Cozy Grove those decades ago. There's a lot to her story alone to be able to unpack all of it, which I won't be doing today, but her prior animosity was due to her resentment in her life as a spirit scout, feeling like she had failed as one due to her actions such as making up false stories in order to release spirits and get merit badges. Feeling like she had failed her scoutmaster, who turns out was her mother who passed away from cancer, and even though it was out of Charlotte's control, the guilt of the helplessness made her give up truly being a scout. What happened to the island? Well, it was already doing not great when Charlotte started out due to the last mayor, and throughout her time, she was so fixated on scouting that she didn't really notice its continued decline around her. Then, one day after her mother's passing, a tragic accident was what sealed the fate. See, Bill, the sailor bear on the beach living in the shipwreck, was a friend of Charlotte's until the accident. The remnants we see are of his ship, the Cozy Grove Ferry, which he crashed that night due to, well, negligent drunk driving. It's implied that although he survived the crash, he ended up taking his own life shortly after, and as the ferry was the sole method of transportation off the island, the remaining residents of Cozy Grove, both alive and non, would from then on be trapped there forever. So what about us then? Well, you would think that back over in civilization, they'd be pretty worried about us and would be at least trying to make a rescue effort. However, as foreshadowed earlier, as time goes on and more letters come in, it becomes increasingly evident that this isn't the case. The first week, Blake at least kind of tries to word things in a somewhat hopeful fashion. By the second week, however, things already start to take a clear turn. Efforts to come out to the island are pushed back and brushed off, while he seems more focused on how your parents aren't able to sue him for the potential loss of, well, us? He even explicitly mentions his doubts of whether we'll ever be back, only to nonchalantly follow up with, I've lost a couple already, no big deal. What the fuck? There's then basically no talk about our situation until the end of the month, where he says that he's thinking of us, in a letter where he admits to having lost only 4 scouts in his time, then proceeds to list only 3. Yeah, pretty clear that he considers us literally a lost cause at this point, and that, well, nobody's coming for us. Further reinforced by how it's not until 3 months later that he sends us, not explicitly a letter about us, but a somewhat cryptic message saying,
"Not every scout succeeds at reaching the innermost circle. Most do not. Perhaps a cliché, but it is about the journey, full of dead ends, meditative lulls, and curious accidents."
Now, I took a quick look through a few different people's playthrough endings, and it seems like most will get to the story ending around day 110 to 120, where the boat gets built, sails back to civilization, everyone's supposedly happy, roll credits. Therefore, however, as the aforementioned letter won't appear until day 129, I feel like of all the people who have beat the game, few have ever gotten to see it. Meaning that even fewer will have gotten to see the heartbreaking final letter that the player can get from Blake, which you'll only get if you manage to make it all the way to day 153 without heading back.
You may be wondering, why so many single fence posts? We usually wait until leadership training to divulge the secret, but considering the length and severity of your independent study, a single log is placed upright in the woods to guide a lost scout home. A signpost, a memorial, as much use as it is for them.
For as long as we don't head back, we will never hear from the Scoutmaster again. At this point, it would have been over 5 months that we've been gone. Not quite missing per se, as they knew the whole time exactly where we are, but yet nobody came to rescue us. We were left for dead. Even the one person from the outside world who at least cared enough to remember we exist, now also assumes we're a goner. Now, aside from all that stuff, which is relatively clear in meaning, there are some other interesting things too that are never actually answered or elaborated on. There's a mention a few times of a past purge and affiliated cult of loneliness, as well as how early scouts awoke a stormlick that killed radios across the nation, but never any more about what happened or what any of it actually means. When picking eye color during character creation or at Mr. Kit's, it's stated that Spirit Scout's eyes are an unusually pale shade because they see beyond. Sure, I guess. But then in a letter, Blake mentions how there's a new batch of junior scouts and they all have normal eyes. Even all that more wild stuff aside, the big question that still makes me really feel for our protagonist in all this is, why? Why were we knowingly abandoned on this haunted island? How the actual is the Scoutmaster able to so casually brush off the demise of scouts, who seem like they're still all children at that? Is there an underlying motive for this, or is he really just that cruel and inhumane? Even if so, not a single other person made any other efforts to come rescue us? And even once we do make it back to them all on our own, I don't know about you, but I would be pissed. Yet the whole arrival seems to get basically brushed off as a, hey, welcome back, nice to see you again. And despite everything, and the players somehow still wanting to stay with the scouts and go back to Cozy Grove after the epilogue, we never get a single apology or anything for how we were treated? While I really do wish I had answers to these for you, and for myself, I guess they really just remain up to our own interpretations and headcanons at this point. As I mentioned in the beginning, it sadly feels like this is pretty late to even be talking about this game anymore. It's been just over 3 years since the game's release, and the vast majority of discussion you'll find on it is from within the first year, presumably as its heyday was during the big boom of cozy gaming and just gaming in general during the pandemic. Again though, even back then, it seems like few people ever really even poked into the lore and story behind it. Despite how deeply I feel about it, I guess not enough others did to really spark that much discussion, and certainly not enough to get any sort of official input from the developers on it. Nowadays, there's still some active members in the community, but it's clearly a far cry from how thriving it once was. For the few who are still out there though, I put this call out for what you all think. Any theories, your own experiences or feelings towards it, or anything to add that you feel like I missed. I know that actually getting closure to it is really a far stretch and wishful thinking, but maybe the few of us who were as impacted by it or still hold on to a special place for it to this day can have a nice and cozy chat over it while we're all still here, somehow. A second Cozy Grove game titled Cozy Grove Camp Spirits is in the works. If you had no idea, I can't blame you at all, because it's really only talked about if you follow the official X or Twitter page, or the Discord. And it's going to be a Netflix gaming release, meaning only as a mobile game, and only for Netflix subscribers. Oh joy. Like, where I stand in the mobile gaming space is the last mobile game that I actually put any sort of real time into, as in played it more than just once or twice, was Flappy Bird. Yeah. Still though, I love this game enough that I would and will play Camp Spirits when it's released. Even for me, it's not necessarily the mobile only part or the Netflix part that upsets me. I'm not a subscriber, but I have access to a Netflix and obviously a mobile phone. My problem takes us back to the previous point. Coincidentally, I'll bring up Spiritfarer again, because it too got a mobile port, also on Netflix Gaming. Even a year or two ago, when the game was still pretty popular though, of the fanbase community, very few of them seem to have any idea the mobile version even existed. I would love to have seen a resurgence of the Cozy Grove fan community. It won't ever be as big as it once was, but I think a sequel that's on all the same platforms as the original, especially Switch where it was really popular, would have drawn in a decent amount still. With it being on Netflix though, the inherent lack of advertising and restriction of access to many of the people that the news would manage to reach, it honestly really crushes that dream, and that is what makes me sad. But no amount of me bitching anymore is going to change that, so moving on. At this point, we still don't really know a whole lot about the new game, whether it's going to be an actual sequel that may give us some of these answers, or a standalone story by itself. There are already beta testers playing the game, but I'm not one of them sadly, and even if I was, they're all under NDA anyways, so we'll see, I guess. No exact release date yet as of the making of this video, but it seems pretty close. Anyways, that's more than enough of me in your ears for now. If you actually stuck around up until this point, thank you so much. This is my first proper video essay type thing that I actually sat down and wrote a script for and all. I kinda did one that's up on my channel, of Bluey's Flat Pack episode, but that was literally like unscripted freestyle recorded in my car while I was waiting for it to charge, so not high quality. Be warned. This is just a passion project, even though it did take a decent amount of time and love to make, but if one person can get something out of it, then, well, it was worth making. So again, thank you for listening to me ramble some BS about a niche game that probably nobody cares about anymore, but hey, if you do and somehow did enjoy it, I'm definitely not opposed to making another video like this going more into the stories of Cozy Grove, so let me know that's what you want to see. Anyways, take care, stay cozy, and goodbye!